Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. There's been a partial verdict reached in the P. Diddy case. They made a verdict on the first 4 counts. Not looking good for the diddler, but we just keeping it 100. But like I said, we don't pick sides. We just trying to enlighten you what's going on. But breaking news, partial verdict, 4 counts already been ruled on. I'm going to break that down in a minute, but I want to bring on a newscast to do what we got to do, keep it moving, and just let's ride. All right, you know what it is, Unique Make Audio, man. We in the house. We're going to pray because we know it's breaking news, so we're going to see what it is, and I'm going to break it down so we're going to get the people that don't believe that a man that sat in jail for 26 years fighting this very same RICO charge, dealing with these predicates on appeal for 20 years, I fought this, and I already see where they messing up, and I'm going to break it down. But let's get him to tell the breaking news. He ain't as live as me, but, you know, he's still doing the breaking news.
Right now on
Told you.
Jury has reached a partial verdict in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs, saying that the jury is unable to verdict on the racketeering conspiracy count, adding that there are, quote, prosecutions agree. Judge's plans to instruct the jury to considerations, and the next steps are apparently right now. So
now, unpersuadable opinions. That means they couldn't persuade them to roll with them, so it's getting hectic. And what I don't like, 'cause I'm a ride right from the beginning. What I don't like is how that juror sent it out from the back, right off the rip, where the 11 jurors went against the 1 and saying he's not following the rules. Not agreeing with y'all is not following the rules. Somebody explain to me what's going on. Or maybe, right, because we ride and we look at all different circumstances. Do you think maybe the 11 people went back there and just said, yo, this is just a bunch of crap. We got to find him not guilty. Let's just get out of here and get to a holiday. You know? And then the 1 said, nah, I think we need to look into this further and do what the judge said. And then they say, nah, we ain't trying to hear that, man. We already know it was a bunch of crap. You know what I mean? I can't even believe he's going to trial for this. This is what the 11 said. And 1 said no. But then again, riding, that 1 juror could have been the one that went in there and said, nah, I can't find him guilty of this because the whole thing is a bunch of crap. And they said, no, but just let's follow the rules and do what the judge said. Nah, I can't do it. It's a bunch of crap. And they're like, no, but you can't. So now they write a note and tell them. So either that 1 juror was with Diddy or against Diddy. We know that much. Let's get back to this.
Again, Boy outside the courthouse along with Brian Buckmeyer from court. And I want to start with kind of caught up on where things are right now. I'm sorry, it sounds like still getting connected there. I want to go to trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer. And Brian, break this down. Heard about all the notes passed from the judge. By my calculation, roughly about 6. And have this partial. What does that tell you?
Person talking about one of the not able to, but asking that question, asking about drug district, asking testimony of Cassie Phillips, one of the escorts, and parts that the government told focus have on them when it comes to that first count of racketeering. When they have a verdict as it applies to the other, just as a reminder, that is concepts advocated by Sean Combs, right for the prosecution is either charges talking about either Cassie or any of the 25 plus words allegedly brought across state lines.
Stop right there. Gunshots, gunshots, gunshots. This is why Diddy should have got me to be his lawyer. I've been through the same exact thing. This is the same play that the government used 30, 40 years ago to get us off the street for the mass incarceration. You see how he said that, oh, it could have been any one of the 35 people that testified this and that? Well, if it was the 35 people, you can't just say, yeah, he transported Jane Doe. He transported Cassie. No, the law don't work that way. The statute says, per Richardson versus United States that I've been showing y'all for the past few videos, all his lawyers had to do was look at unique Mecca audio. The jury have to be unanimous and specific. So now, right, can we ride? We got 34, witnesses up there that testified, and they trying to say that they could decide which one. You have to be specific as far as which occasion, which time and date. That's an occasion. You can't just say he transported Jane Doe when Jane Doe testified about how she called him because she wanted to freak off and she flew to go see him, or Cassie wanted to freak off and she brought him to her. It could be either or, because we know those there is not as far as that. But at the same time, we also have where you could say that on the occasion when they was at the hotel on June 5th, 2015, this happened. Not that Cassie, or Jane Doe is who he transported, because they spoke about a lot of freak-offs and a lot of trips that they made on their own. Or is it just because he paid for them to fly that made it transportation for sex? Now, if that's the case, that means that could we ride? That means that if there's a plumber and he meets a girl, like I said, at a plumbing convention, and he flies her from Nebraska to Utah, right? Is that ex-trafficking? Is that transporting? Because it was his money that paid? You see how technical this get? And if y'all watch this, they get away with this with Diddy, and I'm gonna keep it 100. It's not looking good for the diddler. If he would have did what I said, he would have been excellent right now, because all they're doing is saying that they list 5 acts. These 5 acts got these 5 people, and these 5 people testified to, 20 acts. 30 different occasions of things that happened. Some that was permissible and some that wasn't permissible. That's why I was supposed to be on the verdict seat exactly what act they intended to use, and it was supposed to be a date and an occasion, not that he transported a person, because there's times that the person spoke on, they went to meet up with him to transport themselves by getting to the freak off. You see where I'm at with this? Now, let me ride and tell you how my case went. Maybe that'll help you understand this a little better. I had 3 mules, right? That's what they call them, a drug mule. I had 3 people, they say, drove up and down a highway, and they drove up and down a highway with X amount of drugs, in the stash spot at each, occasion. And then now we turn around, they say sometimes it was crack, sometimes it was powder. Sometimes, then they even said, we didn't even know what type of drugs it was. So now they said that they would sometimes, they said one time they drove and the car was empty, but yet when they went to calculate my drugs, they took it and they said, okay, you got 3 people, they testified to making 75 trips times 3 keys each adds up to 330 keys. And I'm like, but hold up. Sometimes they even testified themselves that at times they transported the car that made these 75 round trips that you're talking about, and there wasn't no drugs in it. So how do we know if they're not picking the occasion when there was no drugs in it? Because if there's no drugs, it was no drug violation. And they said, oh, the jury knew in their mind. I took that all the way to the Supreme Court, went to the Appellate Court, they laughed at me. They said, yeah, the jury knew in their mind, get your black ass out of here. So then now I went to the Supreme Court. I went to the Supreme Court, said, get your black ass out of here. So now they're using my case to deny a bunch of people, and then now they use it to deny a guy named Eddie Richardson, vice lord from out of Chicago, him and his brother, and they use my case as what they call the precedent. Not president, precedent. right? The precedent case, which was the first case that was ruled on this issue, because I was the first one. I was one of the first ones in the country that raised this issue that I'm talking about, and I won that issue in the Supreme Court, because by the time it got to the Supreme Court, even though the Supreme Court didn't grant certiorari for me, they granted certiorari for Eddie Richardson. And when Eddie Richardson went up there, they had to look at my case in order to determine their case. And the Supreme Court said, just because there was a lot of violations that went on, that because the predicates or elements of the RICO, of the statute, that means that there has to be a unanimous and specific verdict, meaning all 12 jury is unanimous, and specific is they got to pick a specific drug violation. So with Diddy, they have to pick a specific transportation or specific rate or specific, you know what I mean? Whatever. So they got to pick a date and an occasion. They can't just say, oh, he transported Cassie. But okay, so you're trying to say every time he transported Cassie was against the law. So every time Cassie got to him, what about the time that Cassie testified she got to him and, you know, she took a plane to get to him? Or she, I mean, come on, let's get back to this. Y'all got where I'm at with that, right? They should have been specific. Being they didn't do that, but I guarantee you this. I guarantee you that they will be raising this issue on appeal. Could they have done this so that they could get more money for an appeal? Because if Diddy beat the case, the cash cow was cut down, the tail is cut. But if Diddy's found guilty, then they get appeal money. You think they could be why they not listening to Unique Make Audio? Okay, let's get back to this.
Brian, as a criminal defense attorney, this is a two-situation, and you get a verdict. You certainly expected one before the 5-4 holiday. How are you?
A little happy. I mean, top count that with the sex trafficking charges have just as much of a penalty as it does in every. I'm a little. I think Cassie charge. Cassie, that is a lot of time. 4-year-old prison.
See what I'm saying? That's where they got to pick a specific incident, 2 of them that happened with Cassie or whoever else they're trying to use. Specific incident. I took the case down. But if you want, go look at my other video where I put it up there that they had to be unanimous and specific as to which count. Make sure you subscribe to my daughter's YouTube channel at Juanita Make Audio. All right? But check it out. So they're sitting here. Man, let's get back to this.
But I think also optimistic, hopeful that
Stop. It's not looking good for the diddler. I'm going to keep it real. The reason why it's not looking good is because if he was not guilty of the other 4 counts, then it would be easier for them to just go right to RICO and say that he didn't violate any of these predicates. So therefore, there is no RICO. So obviously, you know, it's looking like they found him guilty of something. Just keeping it 100. Like I said, I don't want no man to go to jail, no matter what color, creed, or whatever, you know, but it is what it is. Now, that's not looking good for the diddler. 4 counts and 4 counts could be used as predicates. Those 4 substantive counts, those are called substantive counts, right? When they show them on the board, the substantive counts mean those is direct counts that warrant a verdict, right? A unanimous verdict. And then the predicates also warrant a unanimous verdict. But with the substantive count, if they find you guilty of the substantive count, you know there was a unanimity verdict because they found you guilty, all 12. You see what I'm saying? That's how they get tricky. But when you're dealing with the overt acts, you know, as predicates, they don't have to be a verdict, but they have to be a proven or not proven in it. Matter of fact, I even had the partial video. I ain't gonna get it up right now, but that's where we at. So we know that it's not looking good. Like if he was found guilty of, you know, at least 1 or at least 2 of the predicates, I would say that he must have got found guilty of at least 2 of the predicates for them to be looking at the RICO. So now they're looking at the RICO. And that means that, or could we like to ride? You know, I like to just give y'all all kinds of different scenarios, right? So it could also be that being that if they found them not guilty of everything, right? Then they have to go, they might have found them not guilty of the 4 counts, and now they're looking at the RICO, and then they're going to go to the predicates. But if they found them guilty of those substantive counts, those are the predicates. It's no good for Diddy if they found them guilty of any 2 of those charges, because those are the direct predicates that already got a unanimous verdict. You understand that? But the overt acts and the acts that they mentioned that was spoken about that did not go in front, you know what I mean, that the jury didn't find, right? That means that, man, this is just ugly. It's not looking good for the diddler. You know what I mean? But like I said, if they went and just scrambled all over, you know, the indictment and said, well, let's do this count, and let's then do this count, and then let's do this count, then that's where they could have found them not guilty of all of those charges. And then now they're looking at the RICO last, because they knew the RICO was going to be harder to deliberate on. So they may have went with the substantive count and found them not guilty of the substantive count. And then now they're looking back at the RICO and the substantive counts that they listed in the RICO that was not predicate violations. Do y'all understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? See how smooth I am with this? And then I got these rat bastards that come up here and then they talk crap. Oh, how does he thinks he's a lawyer because he did time and he fought his case because his case is just his case. No, my case was the statute that Diddy is fighting. Remember that. My case is the statute that Diddy's fighting. So the statute is like saying the statute is the cake, and the elements is the ingredients to the cake. The ingredients to the cake is flour, milk, you know, and egg. If you replace the milk and put it with water, you bake it, it comes out good, look good, tastes good. It's not a cake, because when you test it, I'm going to take you on a crazy ride with another case, right? I know a lot of y'all watching this don't know a lot about cases, but interested in cases. Check it out. My man went out, right? Let me ride again. This is a good one. My man, right? It was a dude I got from Connecticut, right? One of the homies, you know, Dominican cat. He goes out and he's selling drugs way up there in like Vermont. So he up there in Vermont, he doing his thing. He's selling a mile a minute. Then there's this little white, you know, European girl. You know, I don't want nobody to say that I'm being the R word, but there's this little European girl, right? Pale skinned young lady. She went and got high all day. You know those people that get high. She went from this dude house to that dude house to that girl house, and she had some mollies, she had some ecstasy, she had some coke, you know, she smoked some weed, she drank some liquor, and she had all these different drugs in the system. And then she get to the homie house. When she get to the homie house, he has heroin. He gives her some heroin. She takes the heroin, shoots the heroin, and then she ODs, and then they sentence them for giving her the drugs that took her life. So that's why the government was trying to say, when the juror sent the note out asking if someone asks for drugs and you give the drugs to that person, does that fall under the RICO? Remember, what's her name? O'Connor, the dude, All in the Family, Carol O'Connor. Carol O'Connor was on a big crusade. I don't know whatever came out of that, because it didn't affect me. And that was way back, I think, in the late 90s. Carol O'Connor's son got high, and they went and tried to sue and hold the guy that sold him the drugs responsible for his death, when it was his son that went and requested the drugs and paid for the drugs. In Diddy's case, he didn't charge anyone for the drugs. So that's not, you know, distribution, but it falls under possession. And that's what the prosecution is going to harp on. No, drugs is illegal. He possessed the drugs, and then he gave her the illegal drugs. You see where I'm at with this? It makes no sense, but it makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? If you stop to think about it. But when you're talking about taking somebody's life because someone say, hey, I want to get high so that I can freak off with you. And you be like, well, I got some mollies. And you give them some mollies. And then now they say that, boop. You see how easy that is? So they're asking, does it fall under the RICO? I'm gonna take you on another ride, right? Oh, I didn't even finish the other ride. You see, I'll be riding. So now after he do that, she get all the drugs, and she ODs, and he gets life sentence in jail for giving the heroin that killed her. So then now when we get locked up, I see him and I tell him, I said, hold up, didn't you? Because he would tell, people like telling you about their case. I'm a little jailhouse lawyer. They call him paralegal. I just said jailhouse, lawyer, right? So now I'm sitting in there, and this joint jumps off. He tells me what happened. He says she went to this person house, that person house, did this, and everywhere she went, she had a different drug. I said, okay, so she had multiple different drugs in the system, right? He said, yeah, she had multiple different drugs. I said, okay. And then, when you gave her the heroin, she shot it up and she OD'd, right? He said, yeah, she OD'd off the heroin. I said, stop saying that. She didn't OD off the heroin. You don't know if she OD'd off of one of the other drugs or a combination of all the other drugs or another drug with the heroin. We know that heroin was the most potent drug, but maybe the mollies or the ecstasy mixed with the heroin didn't give her body a good chemical reaction. Give me 50 books of stamps. It's only $250. Give me 50 books of stamps and I'll write it up and you send it to your lawyer. He wrote it up, sent it to a lawyer. He's home in Connecticut now. I told him, stay your ass out of Vermont, but that's because when there's multiple things to choose from, you have to know specifically which one violated the law. So you have to know which drug took her life. You don't know if let's say it was the heroin and the molly, the heroin and the ecstasy. Let's say it was the molly and the ecstasy. You know what I mean? Triggered with the heroin. You see where I'm at? But homie beat it, went home. Next ride.
See, right now they're trying to figure out there and kind of cut our losses out as a dollar hung jury account, or do we call an Allen charge with the judge will instruct that? Or looking at the time, it's 47. Let them on it. Come back. About some of the
Allen charge is nothing more than the judge telling them, take your ass back there and don't come back till you get a verdict. End the story. I don't know how they gonna break it down. But bottom line, Allen charge is them saying, take your ass in the back. Don't come out of there until you get a verdict. You continue to do it. I know you could do it. I got faith in you doing it. I'm forcing you to do it, but it's not called force. I'm just instructing you. You see how they play game with the words? You know what I mean? No, sequester is when they tell them they can stay overnight. They're not letting them stay overnight at nothing. So that's sequester. Yeah.
For either side for the government, but at that point, guys,
did anybody hear that they offered Diddy 5 years a couple of days ago? Would you have taken that 5 years if you was Diddy being in this situation when you'd have held out thinking you could beat it all the way? Because you already said that Young Thug shouldn't have took the plea, that Young Thug would have went all the way, because if we went all the way, then he would have been acquitted by all the charges from the other person. So if Diddy would have took this plea for the 5 years and then get acquitted, then what? But then, being that Diddy didn't take the plea, now he goes, and let's say he gets found guilty. Do you think he would have wished he took the plea? I know he wished he would have gave Cassie that damn money. Instead of letting set that joint in the court, and we wouldn't have been right here now with the domino effect that brought him into the courtroom. Let's go.
Right. For expertise, would we actually partial verdict is before that RICO charge is determined?
Yeah, so positive.
All right, let me explain that partial verdict to you. I'm sorry for keep stopping, because I know these rat bastards and flip-flop wearing and public trolls. He's stopping it too much, because you came here to hear me break this down, and I'm doing the reaction to this video, so I'm going to stop it when I feel like it. And if you don't like it, no disrespect, you can tap out. And matter of fact, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to tap out now. All right, you already know the routine. Take that with you on the way. I'll get that out of here. All right, but anyway, let's ride.
Either side, prosecutor, government has to just final or some length. That's it. We'll do it for all of the all 12 of them agree.
Stop. You heard that? All 12 of them. That's unanimity. That's unanimous. That's what have to happen with those predicates that they have listed under the RICO. So that's a whole nother unanimity verdict within that one charge. That's deep, ain't it? That's how it's getting complicated. And I know the jury confused. My jury was confused. Yeah, listen, let's take a ride. You know, I like to ride. Like I say, we already got rid of the rat bastards. So we're going to take a ride. My judge sat there, right? And he gave these instructions telling them that, oh, you can find Unique guilty of any one of the predicates as long as one of his co-defendants did it because he was the leader and it was his drugs, so his drugs is connected to them, something like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It was his drug, this one touched it, that one touched it, so everything, anybody hands it touch, Unique is responsible. I said, nah, you can't do that. You got to tell me exactly what you're holding me, what predicates you're using. They say, nah, the jury can know in their mind. Keep that in mind. And that's the same thing. I told y'all from last week, man, when I had all these people tell me, oh, you think you're smarter than Bruce Rivers? No, I don't think I'm smarter than Bruce Rivers. My condolences to his son. Nothing is to disrespect him, but when something is said that's not right, like I said, I challenge Bruce Rivers or any lawyer, and I guarantee you it's going to start coming out, and you see it coming out now, where now they're yelling, oh, the 12 jurors. That's the unanimity I've been talking about. You know, now they were supposed to stick with them being specific as to which act. Cassie testified to a lot of acts. Jane Doe testified to a lot of acts. So you can't just say that he transported Cassie or Jane Doe or Cassie and Jane Doe. You have to say at which occasion, at which time, from what location to what location. These are the things his lawyers should have been asking. But if he blow trial, they're going to get another bag for the appeal. Bam, bam, bam. You see how crazy this is? I had to live through this to learn. Lawyers was raping me. I paid like $250,000 to go to trial. I beat 3 out of 6 charges. And the crazy thing, right? Let me tell you how crazy it is. My joint said that you had to have 3 drug violations in order to be found guilty of the CCE. I was only charged with 1, and I was acquitted of that 1. Then for the money laundering, they said that you have to at least have an overt act in order to be found guilty of the conspiracy to money launder. So now my actual money laundering count that was also listed as an overt act, I was found not guilty or acquitted by the jury. So that's where Diddy's at, right? Let's hope. If they acquitted Diddy on those 4 other charges and then they come back and they find him guilty on the RICO because of the confusion that they got, that's where he got to go back on appeal to get them to unravel that. Because right now, Judge Abarn Subramanian is not going to call a mistrial at this phase in the game. They definitely don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So that's where we at. You know, let's keep this riding. You hear that? 12. You hear that? 10-2 to convict. No, you can't. When you're dealing with the predicates for the RICO, they must be unanimous. Everybody you looking at on the screen must agree to the exact same predicates. And Diddy's lawyer should have had them put in there the specific time, location, and incident that they intended to use from Jane Doe or Cassie or whoever else they was going to do it from. And that's the way that go. So don't say I didn't tell you, But, we where we at. Let's get back. But see, now they talking about the unanimity now, what I'm telling you about. But they know they can't say no 10-2, 6. This is not a state trial. This is a federal trial. We're dealing with an element where element warrants a unanimous verdict. You see, right there. He said they're going to poll the jury. Poll the jury mean have them stand up and say, jury number 25, is this your verdict? Guilty or not guilty? You know what I mean, Mighty Man? What are your predicates? You know what I mean, that you chose? If they were smart, and that's where it's at. Man, this is so great.
And obviously, this is something that is developing right now. We just got a note from our chief investigator on here inside that.
New note.
He said the judge will not take partial says once the lawyer work out the language, the judge will go to the room and instruct them to reading both sides. Ask the judge read as of now.
You see what I'm saying? See what it is, right? Let me take this ride. What it is everybody's on pins and needles on the verdict. Even the judge, even the prosecutor. The prosecutor, the judge is like, yo, how you find him guilty of anything yet? You know, you make a verdict or anything? At least send me what you got. You know, man, I can't stop biting my nails. Just send me what you got. You know, and they says, we deliberated on 4. You know what I mean? And he's like, so now when they do that, 9 times out of 10, they actually sent the judge their ruling, and the judge could relax, say, yeah, we got that now. Or you can turn around and say, oh, he done beat that joint. You know, because really and truly in the same world, the judge would have just simply, you know what I mean, threw this out based on the RICO predicates not being there. But they created them, and they're actually using these 2 witnesses that testified and 34 witnesses that testified and saying you could use any one of them as a predicate. No, any one of their acts could be used as a predicate, because that's what the predicates is, an act, an individual act of a violation of the statute. You don't know if he transported all 34 people that testified, if he transported them all the time, if they paid for their own trip, how they might have drove there, anything. Man, this gets so technical, man. Listen, y'all better call me. Y'all need some help in the courtroom. Y'all get bagged up, and I hope you don't get bagged up. And that's what this video is about. The video is about stopping the crap. Don't get involved in crime. Don't go out on the street. So you ain't got to sit there, you know, wrestling, fighting for your freedom. I'd rather you sit here and be a rat bastard and flip-flop wearing in public troll like you was raised to be, and just talk crap to me on YouTube, other than wind up in these people prison for breaking their law. It's not worth it. Don't come off the porch. Don't do it. All right? But let's be respectable. Use a number, because I got a nasty mouth on me too. All right? So don't call with no bull, and then you can't take it. Hey, yo, hold on. Let me tell you a ride. Let me tell you a ride. Yo, look, I'm going to give you one. I had a troll call me one time, right? I only had maybe 2 trolls the whole time, right? I had a troll call me one time. And when he called me, he said, you've been in jail a long time. I said, yeah, your mama was in there, and my homie was busy demolishing her. I said, your mama D probably bigger than your daddy D. Why don't you go suck your mama D? And I was talking so fast, shooting it at him, telling him, man, you ain't nothing but, you've been on your knees so long, cum snatching, and you're just a piece of trash. He hung up. You know what I mean? I called him back. He had a fit. I said, yo, you stupid, cum drinking, no good, boop, boop, boop. And he hung up. I called him back. I said, you coward. He said, why are you calling me? I said, you called me first. You know what I mean? Let's have some fun. He said, man, lose my number. I said, no, you lose my number. So he hung up on me, and I called him back. I said, you done yet? You know what I mean? Yo, but this is how crazy it is, man. I had some time to kill. So listen, I talk so nasty to this dude, telling him go suck your mama's D. You know what I mean? Tell your mama that screw you in the back, you know, pull it out and put it in the mouth. And I went nasty on him. He hung up on me, but he called me to troll me. I called his ass right back. Keep it moving.
Brian, kind of break down the 5 counts.
See, these are the predicates.
And this testimony, prosecution trying to RICO count. Why do you get a little hold up specifically on that particular?
Right. At first, I thought that might have been a foregone. I say that because they've gone to the second aspect of evaluating.
There you go.
That's it. Now I have to, and I wrong in the past, and I'm wrong in the, but I have to imagine
Mm-hmm.
there are predicate acts, as long as there acts happen. That's halfway to
Stop. See, that's the point that I was making. Please, y'all pay attention to what I'm saying. They got 10 predicates they got to choose from, and he has 5 counts that, you know, they made a verdict on. But if those counts could be used as predicates from the guilty verdict, then that means that now they got to look at the RICO. But they wouldn't have to look at the RICO if he was found not guilty of those. Now they would have went and looked at the predicates that was listed under the RICO. And some of the predicates that's listed under the RICO, you know, the acts that's not charged, you know what I mean? Those are predicates, right? Now, the substantive counts is the ones that brought back the verdict. Substantive count is a direct count. So that's what they got a verdict on. So he might be not guilty of all of those. And then now they're looking at the RICO. So don't be surprised if he still beat this. I'm just giving you all the different scenarios, right? So pay attention now, because y'all ain't gonna get this nowhere else. I lived through it and I fought it for all this time, so I already understand. Now, if they found them not guilty of those 4 substantive counts, right? The ones they got the partial verdict on. And then now he's not guilty on that. And then now they're looking at the RICO. So they're looking at the RICO that has its own predicates under it, even though the predicates from the substantive count can be used as well. You understand? But if he was found not guilty of those predicates, you know, then they'll be able to look through the other 10 that they actually listed under the count. And that 10 listed on the count may even have the 5 or the 4 predicate acts listed as a part of that bundle of 10. Y'all understanding what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So you already know how confusing that could be, because I know y'all might be confused, but I break this down so good I know you not, because y'all know how to pay attention. But do you understand what I just said? The RICO charge has 10 predicates that they intend to use, right? The indictment has 4 substantive counts that they said he violated the statute. Those are the substantive counts, is the statute. But then now the predicates can be overt acts or just things that was spoken at the trial. And anything that was spoken at the trial, the lawyer's supposed to write down the date and time it happened so that he could tell them, no, you can't just use all of Cassie's testimony. Cassie testified to things that don't fall under RICO. And that's going to be in an appeal, or that's how he'll have to go about it. But, you know, what do I know? I'm just an old jailhouse lawyer. But, you know, that's how that go. I know y'all got me. See? You see what I'm saying? They always say that, right? Just like with me, right? And with the Supreme Court, right? This what the lower court said to the Supreme Court. They said, surely, you know, Unique had 75 round trips with drugs. The jury could have picked any one of those 75. And you know what I told them? I said, well, you tell me which one of the 75 they picked. You know what I mean? Oh, it's not on the verdict sheet. Then how do we know what they picked? It's in their mind. So how do I challenge it? You can't. So how could that be constitutionally fair? That's a violation of my constitutional right. And I stuck it to them. And I'm in the law books. Look me up. You'll understand. But they tell me, oh, he's not a lawyer. No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a nigga that wanted to get out of prison. You know what I mean? So I learned to read and write, and I studied my ass off. Big shout out to super producer Rico Anderson, man. You know, I'm getting ready to do something with super producer Rico Anderson, and don't forget my man, you know, C's and you know, Paris and Diesel, and let's get this thing moving, man.
Whether or not there's a racket, or this operates. I would think that would be that some people, but I don't.
Well, and again, just to refresh our viewers, prosecutor alleged that Combs was the ringleader of an alleged enterprise that abused, threatened, and first woman in long drug-fueled sexual prostitute called freak-offs, and then threatened in silent testimony prosecutor called their case. Combs' girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, was star witness during the trial. She testified Combs rejected her a decade, and that the threats, sexual demands from Combs drove her into exposed her regular violence.
All right, stop. See, that's what I'm saying, right? See, my point proven right there. They said a decade long of abuse. She spoke on a decade long of abuse and different acts that went. Some could be used for predicates, some can't be used for predicates. You know, some incidents was, falls under the X trafficking, and some incidents didn't because she paid to get there herself, and it wasn't no violation or no impact of interstate or foreign commerce, so that means it wouldn't fall under that. See how complicated this is, but I understand it. And if y'all rewind this tape, you'll really understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. But this is some bull crap. Don't count Diddy out yet, because like I said, the jury may have found him not guilty of those 4 counts real quick. Boom. Case bull crap. Now let's look at the RICO and look at these 10 predicates. So now if they come back and say, not guilty of the RICO, all these dudes running around saying, oh, did he found guilty on the 4 predicates? If he didn't get found guilty of the 4 predicates, they wouldn't be looking at the RICO. No, they would still have to look at the RICO even if he found guilty of the 4 predicates, well, the 4 substantive counts. Even if he found guilty of the 4 substantive counts that they have the partial verdict on, then they still would have to look at the RICO. And then they have their own 10 predicates under the RICO. So it don't have to be these 4 substantive counts. So for people that saying, oh, well, he was found guilty of, they brought back a verdict on the 4 counts, already, the substantive counts. So if they brought back a verdict on that, he must be guilty for them to be now looking at the RICO, because if he was found not guilty of the 4 substantive counts, then they wouldn't have to look at the RICO. They'll just go back and say not guilty of the RICO because there's no predicates there. But no, there's no predicates no more out those 4 substantive counts if they found them not guilty. But then there is 10 more predicates under the RICO. See how fly I am? Do I get a round of applause? Do I get a round of applause? You see how I broke this down? Calm down, y'all. Calm down. Hit that like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hit the notification bell, man. I ain't just talking to talk. Make sure y'all subscribe so you know when the videos come out, because they shadow badge me because my game is too tight and I'm waking up too many people. Do you know how many people call on this phone and say they put the pack down? So many people called me on this phone and said they stopped hustling because they watch my videos and they ain't trying to go through what I went through. So many people I talk to. That's why I love what I'm doing. You know what it's like when somebody call you 3 in the morning and say, man, I was about to kill my sister. Like, what? I'm half asleep. What? Said, yeah, but I'm watching your video and I saw when you were talking about how they was force feeding you when you was in the prison. And I said, man, I ain't trying to be force fed like that. I like to eat too much. And you talk about you was on hunger strike. Man, I'm 280 pounds. I'm just going to sit on my sister and just smother her. But then I said, man, they ain't going to feed me the same in prison. Because Unique said the food in Victorville was so nasty, they gave you a hamburger the size of a silver dollar with a frozen hamburger bun that was already a month stale, but it was in the freezer, so it came out with all this white stuff. And man, I like to eat too much. This what the dude actually told me this at 3 in the morning when he called me. And you know what I told him, right? Yo, take it. You don't woke me up for this bullshit, right? You good now? He said, yeah. I said, you got your phone in your hand, right? He said, yeah, I'm on the phone. I said, well, turn to your Cash App, nigga. What's wrong with you? You don't woke me up. You need to send me something. You know what I mean? And people don't understand that. You woke me up out my sleep 3 in the morning to save your freedom and your sister's life. And then now you're telling me, you better hit that Cash App. All right, let's get back to this. They have to be specific and unanimous as to which occasion he violated the statute of the predicates under the RICO statute. So just Cassie testifying that he did this, did that, you know what I mean? No, we need to know which incidents that Cassie testified to you intend to use, because we have a right to be put on notice. That's a part of the, amendments. Mm-hmm.
The government had at the intercontinental hotel was a part of
they closing statement.
Mm-hmm. Asking it had some power violence that was on Cassie aftermath. body, witnesses, mother, friends, other associates, on and testified about the brutality of Sean Diddy Combs. And I think that really helped him asking not Cassie was sex trafficking, especially by force by the fraud. I think for Cassie, the conversation in large part is about force. And being able to see it, able to see Cassie drives it.
We hear all that crap. We know Diddy whoop up ass. We know what Diddy do. But did that amount to RICO? Y'all put in the comments and talk to me, man. Let's keep this moving.
I think that was powerful for the jury about the sex trafficking. Might assume that might not work out well for Combs and verdict. Yes, but we don't know what their verdict is.
Exactly.
They decided on this way.
There you go.
I will say one added point though. Interesting back and ask them to decide on the racketeering. Sean Combs is found guilty of racketeering. Portion of the indictment talks about forfeiture.
There you go. Now that's where they're going to go get Bad Boy Entertainment. They're going to turn Bad Boy into the Rat Boys. Anybody testify for the government that wants a career depends on how the biggest fish you brought down, depending on the contract that you'll get working for the Rat Boys. Combs Enterprise. You know what I mean? They want all that. That's a whole nother trial after that trial. Listen, I've been through the same thing. I had to have a forfeiture hearing. And the crazy part about that, because we riding. I've already been on here 45 minutes, but I'm riding. I'm enjoying myself, right? And I know y'all getting some jewels. When I had, right, the forfeiture part that he's talking about, after my trial was done, they found me guilty. I said, oh, man, I'm getting me to get life in jail. You know what I mean? And they said, oh, okay, well, you know, step out, go in the ballpen because we got to prep the jury to do your forfeiture hearing. I said, my what hearing? He said, you know, the cars, the houses, everything we took from you, you get a chance to fight for it. You get a chance to show that you own it and you brought it legally and it wasn't obtained by drug money. You know what I told him? I said, man, I got life in jail anyway. You could wipe your ass with that. You know what I mean? What I look like going through another trial and then you're going to bring in more witnesses to talk about these cars, these houses, all these jewels that you seized. And by them speaking on that, now they might say something else to open up the door for another indictment to lock up one of my comrades that you didn't get yet. So right now, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to just eat mine and fight my life sentence because if I go to fight for my property, I'll be putting my comrades' freedom in jeopardy because you don't know what testimony is going to come out at that forfeiture hearing. Because now, let me give you an example. Picture one of my sweet friends that I put a Mercedes-Benz in their name, right? And then now, if I want to fight for that Mercedes-Benz, they have to come in and show paperwork where they got the money from for that. So I told everybody that had anything, yo, if y'all want to come in and fight for it, y'all go ahead and fight for it. You know, I don't care about it. You can keep it. I trusted you to put in your name, so I trust you to enjoy your life with it because I appreciate you for being there for me. Make sure you subscribe to my daughter's YouTube channel, man. All right, she get ready to do her prison. So I'm trying to talk my daughter into doing prison stories because she did 3 years in the state, you know. So to look forward to my daughter. Put in the comments that you want my daughter to tell the prison stories from a female point of view. I might make her come up here. I'm going to interview my daughter to get it out of her to tell these prison stories that went on in the female prison while she was locked up doing the 3 years. But, you know, that's where we at. So they have that second hearing for the forfeiture. And when you have that, more evidence come out, and even though the trial is done, they could take that evidence and then go back, and they could even, this is what they could do, right? If they find Diddy guilty of this, they could do a superseding indictment and then go back and get, yes, what all y'all been talking about, all the workers that they didn't call that said, I'm not going to the trial. They could say, well, we got them now, and now we're going to get you because you was there, you knew it happened, you said on YouTube you wanted them beat this chick, that chick, and you didn't do nothing. You want them get bit with drug, you didn't do nothing, and all that stuff you sold to get the little $5 grand, $3 grand, whatever you got by jumping on people's YouTube channels, putting the man business out there. Now we're going to charge you for being a part of his enterprise, his business. But we wanted him first. So this could be a superseding indictment if he's found guilty. But watch what I say. It could go if God is on Diddy's side, right? If God is on Diddy's side, he was acquitted of those 4 substantive counts, and now they're looking at the RICO, and they're gonna come back and they say that he's not guilty of nothing. If God is not on his side, so we know he whooped her butt. We know he's supposed to be locked up for the domestic violence. But should he go to jail for life? Do you think God is gonna give him life to teach him a lesson? Do you think he got enough karma on him? Or maybe, because we riding, maybe his daddy's karma or his granddaddy's karma is coming back to haunt him, and that's why he's sitting in the position that he's sitting in, because karma is that don't let you slide, and don't forget nothing. Remember that, nothing. All right, let's keep this moving. See?
So they're on the good Sean Combs empire enterprise one money that don't forget he has about 6 lawsuits around the corner when this ends. I think trying to get back interest that racketeering helpful or very harmful to him based on not just equity, but also money associated.
One more note just on the timing of this call. Not yet clear if tonight or if they will opt to go home today. But I want to get Rita Roy, who's outside the house right now, and I imagine that for the crowds of and onlookers gathered day in and day out trial, there's been a reaction. What's it like there right now?
Yeah, well, Alex, behind me across the street, that crowds have started to gather. Have started to show up, cheering, making all kinds of actually just plenty inside the house in black fans every day of this trial here. As we special about 12 hours into the time there, finally, quiet federal prosecutor much other had in his eyes and wiping away. Now, as we know, partial verdict, so the judge is instructing them to take back.
Rita, it's thank you for that. It was a little hard to hear. I think we're gonna work on the audio, but I want to go back to Brian on this about body language. I imagine
Body language, the nigga stress. How you want his body language to be? You listen, when I ain't gonna front though, I gotta keep one. When I was in the court, right, I sat up straight like this, right? Oh, let me fix my mic. I sat up straight in the court like this. And my lawyer said, dog, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean? He said, you look like you don't give a crap. I said, I don't. They're going to do what they want to do. You know how these people are. This is a railroad. They tell them they can use anything that anybody testified to at the trial, even the people that I don't know, to find me guilty of the CCE, which carries life in prison, which is equivalent to the kissing cousins to the RICO. So I sat there like this. He said, man, please, man, I'm fighting for your life, man. Just uncross your arms, So I put my arms down, and you know what I gave him? I gave him 2 middle fingers. You know what I mean? But it was under the table, I said, man, glue them. Because I knew it was a railroad. I knew it was a railroad.
I have a client verdict one way for life. At one point, he wiped his eyes. Defense attorneys were there and a huddle around him.
You see what I'm saying? Now they're trying to make it out like Diddy was in there crying. Yo, I don't care what none of you rat bastards say. I give Diddy a round of applause because he stuck this out like a man. He ain't say nothing. Diddy get a round of applause. Y'all can hate on Diddy all you want. Diddy took his on the chin. Diddy could have, hold on, stop, pause, y'all. Diddy could have sat there, got on the stand and said, hold up, Cassie, don't forget you did this and that they don't know about. And don't forget Jane Doe, you already know you did this and that and da. He could have went up there and blew everybody's spot up to try and save himself. But he said, man, I'm just going to take mine on the chin and I'm going to just fight mine. You don't think he deserves a round of applause for that, win or lose? Everybody was saying, Diddy's a square, Diddy's a this, Diddy's gonna tell, Diddy's gonna tell. Diddy said, there's minus, there's minus. Where's the minus? Where's the telling? Welcome to social media.
What's playing out on that side of the courtroom at both?
I've been in a position times. Have getting everyone together, and you're having this conversation, walking. Sean Combs called intelligent, complex client, intelligent. Well, I don't assume not going to understand the strategy that attorneys are breaking down in front of him. And you just kind of put everything on.
So he's not going to understand the strategies. Yes, agree with that. The same way the jury don't understand the damn instructions. That's why they sending out 6 notes. Like, yo, what the heck is going on? Everybody's confused when it comes to the RICO, because we riding. And look, I done been on here going on an hour. But look, with the RICO, right? I don't know if y'all ready for that, man. Nah, I ain't going to give y'all that one.
You have a lot of Appellate probably to get hurt to okay.
Appellate attorney already there. That means they're already preparing information so they can be ready to do an appeal. So that means they can make them room in their bank account to put that bag in. Could that be why they didn't press the government to make sure that the jury was specific and unanimous as to which specific occasion that these alleged predicates happen, per Richardson versus United States, per U.S. versus Unique? Appellate court there, bag there. Answers is here, baby.
How we can argue. Maybe do this. People like Brian Donald's tried and tested trial attorney, trying to figure out what we do. John Combs to decide how to move.
All right.
Yo, right there, right? And I got to say this, because I don't want you to think I'm bashing no lawyers. I'm just telling you how I would have did it. That don't mean it's right. That's how I would have did it after what I've already experienced, and that's how I would have beat it, and that's how he would have beat it. But I want to give a special thanks and a special shout out. I'm going to do a whole separate video just on him, right? On Brian Steele. When Brian Steele took his jacket off, when he told them, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to rat on the person that told me what happened in the back, that I wasn't a privy of being, and I go to jail for it. He took his jacket off, stood up like a man, did it real proper, and then he tells the judge, well, let me do my weekends with my clients so we could work on the case. How much more gangster can you be as a lawyer? Come on, man. Somebody explain that. How much more gangster can you be than a lawyer? I mean, y'all, I already told my man, I'm trying to meet Brian Steele. I just want to shake Brian Steele's hand, man. When he took that jacket off and was going to go to prison to not tell where he got that information, and then requested to go and spend the weekends in prison with Young Thug, his client. Round of applause again. Round of applause. As a matter of fact, we got to give him the gunshot salute. He gets all that. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and hit that like button. Show the love. Don't take it for granted. Let's keep this thing moving. And subscribe to my daughter's YouTube channel. If you don't know how to spell it, this is how you spell it. Right there. Juanita Mecca Audio. All right.